Okay, today is a special day as we'll be preparing for the trip to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the great sage, author of the Zohar, the Tana from the Mishnah. And today we're going to explain his life and get involved a little bit in the festival that is coming upon us, where we will all make this pilgrimage to the north for the greatest party on earth. Something like a quarter of Israel's population will descend upon his gravesite on the middle of the largest mountain in biblical Israel, which is Meron, to a majestic, intense, extreme 29, 30-hour celebration with live music in several different venues. Every venue has a dance floor. One dance floor alone holds 10,000 people, and the band literally plays the crowd, so the crowd at one point could be jumping like as high as they can, all 10,000, as high as they can. Next moment, everyone's just in a dancing frenzy. And it's a very special day in the calendar, and you guys are lucky enough to have arrived in Israel to be here for this special occasion, and it is an unforgettable evening to be part of. So let's discuss its history so that it will bring to us a lot of context when we are actually in the moment of the holiday, which again is tomorrow night, BOmer this year. Now it works like this. This time is a mourning period. It's the counting of the Omer. We count 49 days from the night after Passover. So you have Passover night, and then the next day we begin our count. Now we count 49, which is 7 sevens, 7 sets of sevens. And when we get to the 49th and we're through with the count, the following night is the 50th, and that's the culmination of the 7 sevens. There's a concept in Judaism when you count 7 sevens, you hit that 50th. That 50th is the next level. So that you'll hear often this concept of 49, and then the 50th is the highest. So also like the Jews were in the 49 levels of impurity in Egypt. Had they gone to the 50th, they would not have merited the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to come back into the land. They would have lost their birthright for that promise. They also, at the leaving of Egypt, they went shooting up to the 49th level of purity. Right before the 50th, we know there's 50 gates of understanding. When you're growing in your own personal awareness of the world around you, as you grow, in your understanding, in your wisdom of the world, there's 49. There's really 50 levels, but the 50th level of understanding is actually number one of the next whole set. So they say there's 50 levels of understanding, but it's really 49 because the 50th is the first of the next set of levels of understanding that are available. Anyway, so we count 49. The 50th day is so holy it doesn't even need a count. It's not counted. It's counted amongst in and of itself. And the 33rd day of the Omer. Let me go back. This counting of the Omer is also an unfortunate time. It is when Rabbi Akiva's students, Rabbi Akiva the great rabbi, his students died during this time. There was a plague that was killing off Rabbi Akiva's students, and apparently the plague was as a result of them not honoring each other enough. There was not enough honor of student to student. Now, they died off in a plague. There's thousands, 24,000 students died in that plague, and there were only a few left afterwards. One of those students was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, on the 33rd day of the Omer, the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. It was over. The plague was over. And therefore we celebrate that the dying was over of that, but also it is the yortzeit of his very special student, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the yortzeit means, it's Yiddish, yor means year, and zeit means time, meaning the anniversary of the death. The yortzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai falls out on the 33rd day of the count of the BOmer. That 33rd day happens to be the 5th day of the 5th week. So it's a double power of that day. So we're in the 5th week of the counting of the BOmer, which is called Hod, which means to give thanks. Todah, Hod. And he passed away on the 5th day of the 5th week. So that's Hod Shebehod, giving thanks within giving thanks. And the concept of giving thanks is focusing in on your benefactor. When you're focused in on your benefactor, you're considered someone who is embodying that attribute. So if you were to give me a book, if you gave me this book, and I said thank you to Mordechai over here, I'd be out of Hod, because Mordechai did not give me the book. You did. You are the source of the book. So when I give thanks, I'm focused on as that I'm a recipient. And by the way, being a recipient is a passive mode. It's more feminine. It's not something that is the assertive masculine. So you have to understand that this particular attribute is a more receiving, more passive attribute. This attribute of giving thanks. It's something that comes easier to women, harder to men, to admit that there's someone who's given to you, that you have a benefactor. And of course, the Jewish people themselves are called Yehudim, Yehudi, or Jew for short, or Yud in German, or Yid in Yiddish. It comes all from the word Yehudi. And it comes from the word giving thanks, because the whole point of the Jewish people is to recognize the source, which is God. So we are a very humble people, recognizing the source. In fact, you'll notice that I have these rather intense side locks here, and this is part of the look of a Jew. It's almost like a goat or a sheep, someone who sees God as his shepherd, and he is not in this might makes right kind of Western headspace. And you'll notice that my haircut is exactly the opposite of aggressive cultures. You'll notice that aggressive cultures shave here and leave the hair here. And I have the exact mirrored opposite here, where I have shaved here and left here, the hair. Aggressive cultures always shaved over these areas. You'll notice the Mohawk Indians is a warrior tribe. In South America, the Yanomamo Indians are a warrior tribe. You might have seen them in National Geographic pictures. The South American Amazon Indians, Yanomamo, they have this they shave all around, which is a prohibition in the Torah, and then they have this mushroom, very fine straight hair, kind of mushrooms. You ever seen that in the National Geographic? Warriors, more warriors. Yeah. It's the Viking haircut. It's the army haircut. It's the boxers. It's the rugby player, the football. All aggressive sports, they generally go with this look. And you see that my haircut is the inversion of that. Now, of course, no one has to grow these things. All you have to do is not shave this area. It's a negative commandment. There's no positive commandment there. It says, do not shave this area, which means you can keep it trim, just not to go down to the skin in this area. You have to keep a couple millimeters of hair over your jawbone and obviously above it. So, nice set of sideburns. You don't have to do the full Elvis Presley, but if you feel your bone and you don't feel a couple millimeters of hair there, then you have shaved too high. You need to start growing out. You're going to have a little bit of a different look if you want to fulfill this commandment, but you need to have perfect example. Please angle in the camera over here. Can you look at those lamb chops? Oh yeah, all the way down to here. He scored. Okay, so you're in his pass and my pass. What's your name again?
Adam.
Adam's pass and my pass are both kosher pass. His are no more kosher than mine. We both have not shaved over that bone. We have fulfilled one of the 613 commandments by not shaving over that bone. But what I've done with my payas is I have what's called beautifying a commandment, lahadar, mahadrin, is to beautify a commandment. Just like Hanukkah, all you have to do is light a candle. The fact that you might light a silver menorah is beautifying it. Kiddush, all you need, get a cup, pour some juice in it, some wine in it, and make Kiddush. But to use nicer wine, to use a silver Kiddush cup that costs $100, you're beautifying the commandment. You see what I'm talking about? You're taking a mitzvah that God gave you, and you're busting it out, like really saying, God, I'm thank you with this. Another example, tefillin. A pair of tefillin, you could get a pair of tefillin probably for, subsidized. Or you get it for $250, but you can, let's say you can get a pair of tefillin for $500. If your car's stereo is worth $1,500, buy a pair of tefillin for $1,800. Don't spend more money on your stereo for your car that you did for you, and you know it. But you're going to buy something to serve God, spend a little more money than you spend on your car stereo. And that's a mahader for you. Another person spends $500 and he never buys nothing for $500. That's over the top for him. He never spends that kind of money. In fact, he's going to have to borrow it, or he's going to have to pay it off over 5 months, $100 a month. For him, that's mahadrin. For each person it's different. But interestingly, here there's a negative commandment that I'm beautifying, which is kind of interesting. You hear what I mean? It's a negative commandment that I'm beautifying, and perhaps maybe that's the reason why we beautify this commandment, because it's getting away from the cultures that said might makes right. That we'll kill and we'll talk about it later. Might makes right, but rather maybe that's the reason we're beautifying it, is that we're really making a statement here that through wisdom and understanding, I can understand you, I can hear you before I state my point. I'm going to listen. I'm going to seek first to understand your side before I state mine. And these tell you what is a Jewish contribution to humanity is compromise means strength. I feel so confident in my position that I'm willing to even give. Compromise means strength. The rest of the world thinks we're crazy. Tell Arabs the concept of land for peace. They love that concept. Land for peace. Yeah, that's great. See, we're saying we're so confident it's our land, we're even willing to give you some. You can only give something that's yours. So since we're giving it, and they are the quintessential might makes right society. They embody it like it's like 1,000 years ago, where the whole world was might makes right, except for the Jews. And so every time we act Jewish and say compromise shows strength, they of course are like, we're glad you feel that way. That's perfect. You just keep giving, and we'll just keep taking. But it's very dangerous for the psyche, because it gives them they can become overconfident. The more compromise Israel does, which is our deepest attribute of showing strength, the more compromise we do as a nation, it starts bolstering their confidence to actually maybe wage a more serious affront. It's very dangerous to give them too much. Now, back to our story. So on the 33rd day of the BOmer, Rabbi Kiva's students stopped dying. It's kind of funny because Rabbi Shimon did die, but later. He died later. He died of old age. He didn't die by plague nor by being killed by the Romans. Rather, he died on the 33rd day of the BOmer. Now, here's a little story about his life, give you an idea of who he was. First of all, he was a great sage. He was one of the writers of the Mishnah. When you read Mishnah, and you'll see the name Rabbi Shimon Omer. Okay, they're not playing Simon Says here. Shimon is Simon, Omer is Says. Okay, when it says Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Simon Says, they're not talking. That is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's Rabbi Shimon, the son of Yochai. Sometimes it states the son of Yochai. sometimes it doesn't, but whenever it doesn't, it also refers to him. That is Rabbi Shimon saying something. Now, so he's an author in the Mishnah. He's one of the people you'll see in conversation in the dialogues of the Mishnah, meaning the oral law. So he is like the basic, one of the founding sages of Jewish legal tradition, of halakha. Now, there was a point where he had been in a conversation with others, and someone was kind of, I don't know how you would say it, he was talking about how the Romans had done so much for Israeli infrastructure. Look at these highways, look at these beautiful bathhouses they've built, look at these buildings, this architecture. Haven't the Romans really been a great gift to Israel, the Jewish people?
There's a scene from Life of Brian, what have the Romans done for us? It must be based on that.
Oh my gosh, very nice. They said, what have the Romans done for us?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is that what you were smiling about?
Infrastructure, the wine, the health, sewage.
That's so funny. That's exactly what happened.
It must be based on
this. It must be. So this conversation, I don't know if there were any Jewish writers from Monty Python, but anyway, they were saying, isn't it wonderful what they've done? At which point Rabbi Shimon said that everything they've done was only for themselves. They didn't do any of this for us. Jewish slaves built most of this stuff. This wasn't for us. This stuff they did was for them. And I prefer to have our old bumpy roads and our old broken down mikvahs and, the bathhouse, and I'd rather have our broken down buildings built with regular Jewish labor, that's paid Jewish labor, than not all this Roman architecture everywhere. I'm not interested in our new hosts, the Romans. Now, word got out to the Romans that this Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was an insurgent. He was someone who was creating insurgents against the Roman Empire, and word came out back to the Jews that the Romans have declared that he must be killed. And now they're coming up to kill Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon decides that he's got to hide. And so he takes off with his son, Rebbe Glaser, who's also a great sage of the Mishnaic times. And the two of them head off into the mountains, into the wilderness, until they came upon a cave. And they basically moved into that cave for the next 12 years. To be exact, they moved into that cave for 12 years. So it was pretty major. Now don't forget, back then, this is when the oral law was still oral. So they know all of Torah. Meaning they have no problem studying the oral law for this entire 12 years. All they were doing anyway was studying. It's just now they're studying in hiding. So they were hiding out in this cave. And by the way, they had nowhere to... they didn't have a change of clothing. They went with the clothes they had on their backs right then. They also went, what are they going to eat? What are they going to drink? So the tradition has it that a spring sprung up outside the cave, which is, basically the water table just shot up right there. And they had a little spring right there. And they also had a carob tree that sprouted there. Carob's like one of the major trees in the north. But the carob tree sprouted up, and I think it even blocked the cave itself, so no one could see it. So they ate carob and drank spring water for those 12 years, in case you're wondering what they ate and drank. But the question is, what do they do for clothing? You can't wear a pair of clothing every day for 12 years. So you know what they used to do? It was amazing. They would remove their clothes for the days of the week. They would bury themselves with sand inside the cave, and they would learn their Torah, because you can't learn Torah naked. They would learn Torah buried in sand, and that's how they spent their week, buried in sand up to their necks. Can you imagine coming upon that cave? You just see two heads on the ground, talking Torah. Don't mind us, we're just learning a little Torah here. Whoa. So then on Fridays, they would wash off and they would put on their clothes for Shabbos. And they'd wear the clothes all Shabbos. And then after Shabbos, they would take off their clothes and they would go back into the sand.
Why not just wear clothes for 12 years?
What's that?
Why not just wear the clothes?
Because then they wouldn't have Shabbos clothes. Shabbos clothes are very important. Your finest. So if you only have one set of clothes, so you have to be naked during the week. Just kidding. So don't try that at home.
If you live in a cave.
If you live in a cave. And you have a lot of sand. So anyway, after 12 years, Elijah the prophet shows up outside the cave and says to them, "Gentlemen, I have good news for you. The Roman decree is over. They no longer are after you. You can come out of the cave." Now these two have been learning Torah non-stop for 12 years. They are on fire. In fact, everything they're looking at is catching on fire. And they are blazing fire, these two. They walk out of the cave, and the birds that were flying over your head were burning up. You know, like Mount Sinai had a fire. So they called, Rabbi Shimon, they called him Sinai. They called him Sinai. So everything that was flying over his head was burning up. He was literally, they were setting ablaze everything. They were, and you probably had this experience before. Have you ever had like a great moment of clarity, a total epiphany in your life, and then you walk into like normal society, and you see like, you're like towering over like the average guy on the street because of the clarity you're walking around with? That's a kind of fire. And you could easily burn your family when you get home, and you know your family is like talking about mundane things when you've realized the truth of the universe. You know, you could easily burn them with such things. And people come back from Israel usually pretty on fire, and the people don't know what to do with them, you know, when they show up so inspired. But this is like times a million. You know, that's how on fire they were. Question? You want to get this question over here? Yeah.
You say that on Mount Sinai there was the Esh of Torah, right? On Mount Sinai, the Esh of Torah.
On Mount Sinai there was Esh Torah.
On Mount Sinai,
On Mount Sinai there was the fire of Torah, yeah?
and the fire was not consuming
The mountain.
on the
You're saying the bush?
bush.
Oh, the burning bush. That was also on Mount Sinai. Yeah.
So if by
Oh, we're talking about the fire of Sinai, not the fire of the burning bush.
it's not the same.
Not the same. No, different fire. Although I don't think the Mount Sinai was consumed by the flames. I think the mountain remained the mountain. Might have been a little charred. Might have been a little singed at the top, you know. You know, I don't know how the fire affected the mountain itself. But yeah, we're talking about a different fire. Now, so they're walking out of the cave, and they're on their way out, and they find a man who is farming. You know, just some man working the field. And like I was saying before, they saw this guy, like we might be when you get back from Israel. He sees this guy working the field, and they say to each other, Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Glaser, look at each other, and they're like, what kind of loser would like be doing physical work in this world when he could be working for the next world, learning Torah? And the guy looks up from his stuff, from his, you know, his labor on the soil. He looks up, and the guy poofs into smoke. Burns. They burn the guy. And they're both looking at each other like, whoa, we better tone it down a bit. When a voice came from heaven, there was a voice from heaven that said, this is what you do with my world? You're going to burn everybody up with your fire? Back in that cave. And they sent them back into the cave. They were sent back into the cave. And back in that cave, they stayed another year. Only this year was to work out not only all the Torah they had learned, you know, that they would be learning that year, but also how to re-enter, you know, like the space shuttle re-entry, how to re-enter society in a way that you're water and not fire. You can keep your fire burning without burning anybody else. We have another story of this in the Torah of Moses. He came down from Mount Sinai glowing, and it was freaking out the Jews. And the Israelites were flipping out over this glowing Moses. It was scaring them. So he would actually wear a mask when he would speak to the people so that they could, deal with him. It's a lesson for all of us, is when you get clarity in life, don't burn your family in the process. Remain water with them while your fire burns inside. And translate the fire inside yourself to beautiful dealings. Deal beautifully with people, even though you're on fire. You get these people yelling Shabbos at cars in Jerusalem on fire. They're on fire. You think I'm any less on fire about Shabbos than the people screaming at the cars? I translate it differently. I say, I found a guy pruning the hedges this Shabbos. Now, I could have gone up to him going, Shabbos! Shabbos! Which would have been really effective with this Israeli guy pruning the hedges of many small villages. And he was just pruning the hedge of our small village. Anyway, but I walked up to him kindly. I realized, you want to prune your hedges, and it's something that's very important for the hedges, but maybe not on the Shabbat, when it might be affecting the sensitivities of others who are celebrating Shabbat. He said something like, I'll go prune somewhere else then. Who knows what drugs this guy was on. All of a sudden, I must prune hedges, in the crazy neighborhood where I was. Anyway, back to Rebbe Shimon. So they're in the cave for another year. Now, during those years, they weren't just involved in Jewish law. They were studying the Kabbalah, which is a tradition that goes all the way back to Adam, who, before he ate from the fruit, obviously could see right through everything. He was able to see the secrets of creation right before his very eyes. As it says, that he was able to name the essence of all things. The Hebrew names for things is the actual essence of that thing. And Adam was able to actually see all that stuff, at least before he ate from the fruit. Abraham was a great Kabbalist. In fact, we have a book from Abraham called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, which is a Kabbalistic book about how the world was created. We have that book in hand today. But the tradition really was brought down deeply at Sinai to the Jewish people and passed down orally for over 1,000 years. And only with the Romans, Yimak Shemam V'Zichram, may their name be wiped out and their memory as well. Only with them did the Kabbalah get written down in detail, and that was written down by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I read also on the day of the day that he I must have completed it was also Lag BOmer, the 33rd. By the way, the word Lag is Lamed Gimel, Lag. Lamed is the number 30 in Hebrew, and Gimel is 3, right? Aleph Bet Gimel, 33. Lag means the 33rd day of the Omer. Clear? Now, he wrote down, just like the Mishnah, which is oral law, it wasn't supposed to be written down. It was written down because of Roman persecution. So to the Zohar, which is the book of radiance, the book of light, the book of Kabbalah, it was also written down, very encoded, very cryptic, only for those who understand how to learn it properly. It's a book that's not it's not an easy read, let's say. It's very cryptic, written in Aramaic, and it's all just the coding of the secrets behind everything in creation, including all the commandments and all the stories of the Torah and the actual building blocks of the creation itself, afterlife, reincarnation, all the mysticism. It's like the eastern side of Judaism, if you will. Judaism's got its western side, which is more ritual side, and it's got its eastern side, the more mystical side. Together you get spiritual, spirit and ritual, spiritual. So Rabbi Shimon was both. In fact, back then, if you wanted a spiritual person or you wanted a legalistic person, they were the same guy. Today, if you want to learn Jewish law, you go to one rabbi. You want to learn mysticism, you go to another. In those days, they were the same exact people. And that's who Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was. Now, spiritually, we have a tradition about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that he was the sum total of all the Jewish souls. There are 600,000 root souls of the Jewish people, meaning at Sinai, there were 600,000 root souls there. All the other people at Sinai, because there were 3 million altogether, the other 2,400,000 were branch souls of those 600,000 root souls. Now, there are certain great sages that embodied more than one root soul. There could have been a sage that was 1,000 root souls, 100,000 root souls. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was all 600,000 root souls wrapped up into one human being. That's how powerful Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was. He, therefore, is you, and you are him. Meaning, if there's one rabbi in Jewish history that you would connect with more than any other, it would be Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because your soul automatically is within his soul. Now, of course, any one of this root souls, let's say your root soul number, by the way, Moses had that as well. Moses was also, his soul was one of these general souls of all of Israel. Vayuminu Bashem Uve Moshe Avdoi. He was one of those root souls. One sec. So let's say root soul 100,365. Let's say you're part of that root soul. So everyone who's walking around the planet who's from that root soul, you would very much connect with that person. If you've ever really connected with somebody, it's probably because they share your root soul. And who you'll marry, those who aren't married, the person who you'll marry will probably be your root soul as well. You'll marry someone who's of your root soul. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the sum total of all root souls. So when you celebrate his yahrzeit, the anniversary of his death, you're really celebrating not only the anniversary of his death, but it's the death of every one of your ancestors, whose dates you don't even know what day to light the candle. You know, one of the ways you celebrate a yahrzeit is you light a yahrzeit candle, a 24-hour candle. So you'll notice that what people light on Lag BOmer is bonfires instead of one candle, because we're talking about the souls of all of Israel. So instead of one wick, you need more like a couple thousand logs. And these giant fires represent the yahrzeit candle. They are this giant yahrzeit candle for all the souls of Israel. It's like going to your own yahrzeit. When you go to Rabbi Shimon's grave on Lag BOmer, it's like going to your own yahrzeit. It's a very spiritual day. He's also the one who redacted one of all the writings, meaning all the tradition of Kabbalah, on reincarnation. So anyway, people don't die. And for that reason, meaning when people die, they don't die. Their body dies. The soul keeps going. You keep moving. And for that reason, he commanded that everyone must celebrate on the day of his death. He asked that people should celebrate on the day of his death with food and drink and dancing and music. And in fact, ever since he passed away 2,000 years ago, people have been making this pilgrimage to Rabbi Shimon. And there are still people today you could meet. They have long white beards, who remember when they were little kids, 2 weeks before Lag BOmer, they were put on donkeys, and their families would actually make their way from Jerusalem for 2 weeks. They would travel via donkey with the whole family and make their way, camping out for 2 weeks, up to Miron to go to the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. All the more so today, now that we have airplanes to fly into Israel and buses to bus you up there. No one has any excuse not to go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's grave on his yahrzeit. But it's gotten a little easier now than 2 weeks going up and then 2 weeks coming back. But this pilgrimage has been happening all along. As long as there have been Jews in Israel, this pilgrimage has been taking place. And it's been getting bigger and bigger each year. And now we're in 2009 now. It's gotten to, they're not sure how many exactly because it's a little hard to count, but it's they say 750,000 people, close to 1 million people are coming. This year might be 1 million people because it's not hitting Shabbos. When it hits, if it's on a Friday or a Sunday, meaning after Shabbos, it gets a little more difficult. So some people opt out. But when it's in the middle of the week, like it is this week, it's on a Monday night. It's a lot. Anyone who's even thinking of going will be there. Also, the reason it keeps getting bigger and bigger is once you've gone once and you broke through the experience, you got it. There's a point where you get it, and you get it when you stop trying to get it. It's one of those things that you only get when you stop trying to get it. People are always busy trying to get things. They're the intellectual, analytical types who are usually miserable beings anyway, because they're usually analyzing themselves half the time. But which can never be fun. Constantly analyzing yourself. I mean, it's okay when you're in a good mood, but what kind of self-analysis you're going to make when you're in a bad mood about yourself? Could be pretty dastardly. Anyway, but the analytical types don't get Lag BOmer. In fact, they don't even go to Lag BOmer. And so the problem is, I know a certain Jew that flew here. He came to my third meal this week. He's a very analytical Jew, and there he was at my table with his special, very squared off structure style glasses, his tie just right, and his trimmed beard. Everything is, very structured. And analytical people are very structured people versus flow people, who are more diffuse thinkers. So philosophical thinkers. So anyway, he was like, my father-in-law is Hasidic, and he's taking me to this event in Miron. I don't know what to do. I'm so nervous, and I can't figure out why we should even be going there. And I said, you know what? I'll give you the answer. When you get there, you must start dancing. And you just keep dancing. And dancing and dancing. And I looked at him carefully, and I did a little equation. Between the third and fourth hour, something's going to click for you. And you're going to get it. You won't be able to explain. He said, get what? I said, you won't be able to explain it. If you could explain it, you didn't get it. Something clicks, and you got it. And once you get it, you got it, and your life is never the same again. Your life is never the same again. You can have a transformation at this experience that's inexplicable. You can't really explain it, but you know that everything is one. You are one with the people around you, the sky above, the earth below, the band playing the song. Certainly Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has now fused with your soul in a very deep way. You're now in love with Rabbi Shimon like the rest of, Am Yisrael. But something clicks. And it's not an intellectual click, it's not an analytical click, it's just, you got it. And so the way to get it is to go into the event fully, leave your mind behind in a way, leave your mind behind, and just go into the Rabbi Shimon mode of dancing and singing and celebrating. And after enough hours of that, it'll click. And when it clicks, the next thing you'll notice is the sky is starting to get light. Because you will stop noticing anything for a while, for many hours. Last year, the people I introduced it to danced for 8 hours straight. 8 hours straight. People started, once dawn comes, the music stops, and we all kind of met back up. This year we'll be meeting back up. We're starting at for Mariv, the evening service, and I'll give some words of how to approach the night, and then we will do our own bonfire there with music, live music. That'll be at 8 o'clock. We're going to do that at the grave of Rabbi Yochanan Hassandler. You should write that down if you didn't write it already. Rabbi Yochanan Hassandler. Also leaving Jerusalem for the pilgrimage is going to be at 2:30 at the Cardo, which is the Roman pillars Over here, the Roman pillars, the Cardo, and then walking out to the street called Malchei Yisrael, right down Malchei Yisrael. Walking out to the street Malchei Yisrael, where the buses will be leaving every 10 minutes. And it's a little pushy getting on the buses because everyone's freaked out, even though it's ridiculous to be pushing at that time of day because there's way more buses than there are people. And try to get on the bus together. And what's that? 2:30. And leave your body behind. Meaning, when you get on the bus, just leave your body behind. Go up with your soul, because there's no room up there for any more bodies. Rabbi Shimon was about the spiritual, what's behind things. And just bring your soul. That's what's really going on. And then when someone steps on your foot, make sure you have closed shoes, no sandals. High tops are very good. You're definitely going to have your feet stepped on various times. But you should, when you leave your body here and you bring only your soul, whoever steps on your foot is you anyway. So can you imagine stepping on your own foot and elbowing yourself? You know, it's all you anyway up there.
Do you need to take food or?
No food, no drink. If you want to snack on the bus or something, but you don't need any food, you don't need any drink. It's all provided and it's all free. All the restaurants there will be restaurants in tents. All the food is free, and all drinks are free for sure. If anything, you might want to bring some booze to share with someone else. If you want to share booze with another person. Otherwise, you can drink other people's booze. No one sleeps that night. You dance all night. The next day, you're wiped out. Sunrise, you go to one of those restaurants, have some breakfast, and then move on out back to Jerusalem, or stay. I'm staying 2 nights. Stay.
If you want to hike from Safat, should we leave earlier in the morning?
If you hike from Safat, you need lots of water. You do not want to get caught down there without water. And also do it in a way you don't waste too much energy, because you're going to be dancing all night long. So it's kind of a strange day to be hiking from Safat, but it's kind of a nice way to do it, because that's what the Safat Kabbalists used to do. They used to walk. They did it a few days earlier, and then they would stay at Rabbi Shimon until it was Yortzeit. But to hike from Safat is a very traditional Kabbalistic thing to do, and it also prepares you spiritually during the whole couple-hour hike to get to Rabbi Shimon. But you will need every bit of strength you have to dance the entire night. But you're young and dumb. Go for it, you know. So definitely do it. So, yeah.
How long on average does the bus take to get there?
If you leave tomorrow afternoon, the bus will take 3 hours to get there with a rest stop. If you leave later, there are no promises, because you and all the country are going to be going all at the same time.
So quite early if you want to hike.
Earlier the better. But
if you want to hike, leave 10 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah, if you want to hike from Safat, take a bus to Safat. All those buses are going to go to Miron. You want a bus to Safat, and then you call information for that. What else? Yeah, so if you leave later, it could be 4 to 6 hours on the bus to get there, just because of all the other people coming at the same time. We're going to be meeting, by the way, at sunrise again for a prayer service at Yochanan Sandler, at the same grave, which is right above Rabbi Shimon, right above his grave.
What time will that be?
What's that?
What time will that be in the morning?
I don't know. I'm not very good with time. I have no idea. Sunrise, it's probably 5. It's probably 6, so prayers will probably start around 5:30. Music will probably stop around 4:45, 5.
We need to bring out tefillin.
Bring your tefillin. Yeah, you'll stash it. During the dancing, you stash. Everything will be stashed. There's also official stash spots where people have donated their entire BOmer to watching bags and stuff. But you don't need those. You can just stash it. Ask someone if you can stash it in their tent or something. Okay, I think we covered BOmer pretty well. If you're even considering not going to Rabbi Shimon for his Yortzeit, you should just stop thinking now. Forget the Yortzeit. Stop thinking now and make sure you get to his Yortzeit and be there. And I don't care what emotional state you're in or whatever. Forget it. Just stop thinking. Get up there and party with Am Yisrael. The only money you need is, if you're not hitching, I don't suggest hitching there. You can hitch back. The only money. So if you're a hitchhiker and want to save money, don't buy a round trip bus ticket. But the only money you need really is for that bus. Should be somewhere between 30 and 50 shekel, I don't remember. And that's all you need. And if you need money, I'll give you money for that too. Okay? Happy BOmer, everybody. I'll be back on Thursday for the next class.